Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. Hi, and welcome back to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, licensed naturopathic physician and creator of the Vital Spirit method, where I walk women through navigating fatigue, hormonal chaos, burnout, and the longing to reconnect with their true vital self. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today's episode is about something subtle, foundational, and often overlooked in modern healing, and that's drainage. Not detox, not cleansing, not purging the body with extreme protocols and supplements or restrictive diets, but rather the gentle, rhythmic opening of your body's natural pathways of elimination so that the healing work you're already doing can actually move through energetically. We're going to talk about gemmotherapy, biotherapeutic drainage, and how this work fits into the deeper framework of the Vital Spirit method. If you've ever felt worse on a detox protocol, or if every supplement plan that you take seems to hit a wall in your healing process, then this episode is going to shift the way that you think about healing. To anchor into the energy of this vibrational episode, I want you to do a quick exercise with me before we dive in. So I invite you to take a deep breath in. Ready? Inhale and exhale. If you're able to, you can plant your feet firmly on the ground, whether you're sitting or maybe you're sitting cross-legged on the floor. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes and do this. But wherever you are, hopefully you can just feel a little bit supported by earth or by the chair that you're sitting in. And you can close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Now, I want you to imagine you're a tree and you have this vast root system reaching deep into the earth. Imagine the way that the tree draws nourishment from its soil. Imagine the way that now this tree's branches and leaves reach up to the sun and pull energy down. And imagine the tree soaking up water and hydration through its root system and moving that water throughout the trunk, throughout the branches, and to the leaves or buds, if any buds are being grown. This is the essence of gemmotherapy. So if you're this tree, just as your body is drawing in energy from nature, from the sun, from water, from the nutrients in the soil, so too can you take a gemmotherapy essence and have that vibrational movement and energy healing move through your body, just like that tree. So with patients of mine who really resonate with nature spiritually or who are super into the herbal energetics of healing, I will have them hold a bottle of gemmotherapy even and just see how they feel holding that bottle. If patients are new to this process, I'll very often show them pictures of a plant or of a essence or gemmo that we're going to be using and see if that resonates with them. And for some patients, this is a little bit too energetic or frequency based, and I might get more, let's say, cerebral or in our brains about it, and we may actually talk about symptom pictures or presentations that they have physically that can relate energetically to a plant remedy. So you might hold, let's say, a bottle of Quercus oak, and you might actually feel the strength from that remedy and really be drawn to that. Some patients also then might read about that remedy and say, oh, that's what I need in my healing journey. So hopefully as you closed your eyes and took a deep breath, you're ready to receive some of the energy and some of the healing frequency from our conversation today. So let's start with this. When we're talking about detoxification and drainage, more is not always better. We definitely live in a culture that glorifies doing more, taking more tests, more supplements, more cleanse kits every spring. But real healing is not about force, it's about flow. Yes, there's a time and a place for detoxification, but when patients come to me and they say, I've done liver detoxes, I've done parasite cleanses, I've done a mold treatment protocol, but they're still tired, anxious, or maybe constipated, then I'm going to ask, well, were your pathways of elimination open when you did that protocol, or did you just stir up more in the body that wasn't able to drain? So essentially, gave the body more than it could handle at one time. Because if your liver, your lymphatic system, your kidneys, your skin, your nervous system aren't ready to eliminate, remember, if you're not in that healing state that we've gone over in previous episodes, then you're just recycling toxins through a clogged system. It's not draining. And that's where drainage comes in. Drainage is the process of gently stimulating and supporting the body's emunctories. These are your organs of elimination. Your liver, which processes hormones and toxins, your kidneys, which filters waste, your lymphatic system, which carries cellular debris out, and your lungs, bowels, and skin. Your skin's actually the largest organ of elimination or emunctory, and in naturopathic medicine, these are really sacred systems. They're the gateways between your internal environment and the external world. And when they're stagnant, whether from hormonal shifts, nervous system dysregulation, chronic stress, or a lifetime of suppressive medication, remember suppressing the symptom and not allowing the process to resolve in the body, then you really can't or your body won't necessarily heal as deeply as it needs to, especially in a long-term healing journey. So you can't integrate the emotional or spiritual work if the body is stagnant and not moving. Essentially, you may feel stuck. I designed the Vital Spirit method in such a way because I was noticing that we weren't really able to have the more subtle, nuanced conversations around spiritual healing or some of the mind body work. Or even I was noticing that some of the vibrational remedies that I wanted to use weren't necessarily landing in bodies that had such stagnation and that were just really so stuck. So there was an order of operations essentially that we needed to take. We talked all about terrain healing in our previous episode, so now let's go a little bit deeper and let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in modern medicine, and that's the extracellular matrix or ECM. The ECM is essentially the space between your cells. But it's not empty, it's intelligent, it's an active medium where communication is happening. Toxins are buffered in this system, immune cells are mobilized through the ECM, and nutrients are exchanged. It's critical to the detoxification or drainage process. When the ECM is burdened, whether by environmental toxins, chronic inflammation, or emotional suppression, even, it becomes dense and sticky and stagnant. Like a clogged sponge almost. It can't transmit messages. Nutrients don't get in. Waste doesn't get out. This is where gemmotherapy really shines. You see, gemmotherapy isn't just about the liver or kidneys, it's a system-wide terrain therapy that restores flow through the extracellular matrix itself. In fact, some of the early gemmotherapy researchers like Dr. Max Teitau and Dr. Paul Henry saw this matrix as the first layer of dysfunction in chronic disease. Before symptoms show up in an organ, they're often trapped in the ECM. And what's beautiful is that gemmotherapy remedies come from the plant's embryonic tissues, or stem cells, buds and shoots that are full of growth factors, nucleic acids, minerals, and they have such regenerative potential. So they don't just detoxify, they actually reorganize and regenerate the terrain. This is so amazing when you're focused on terrain healing, right? And if you think of the ECM as the body's biofield in physical form, then gemmotherapy becomes the bridge between tissue and frequency, between matter and spirit. So we might be working on a spirit root cause or an emotional adhesion, and we might be using gemmotherapy to move that through on the physical plane. That's so cool to me. So let's talk about terrain medicine and the vital spirit method and why drainage is one of the first and earliest steps in the vital spirit method. If you've listened to earlier episodes, you know I talk about the 4 pillars. We work on the gut brain axis, where we're recognizing and removing inflammation and working on our healthy stress response. Then we move on to the HPA axis. We balance hormones and neurotransmitters, and we work on hair, skin, nails, and spirit. Now, the nuance is that I was finding that did have patients who really needed to kind of clean their system out in order to see an energetic shift and in order for their system to really be resonant with some of those vibrational remedies and energy remedies. So I certainly might introduce drainage remedies as a first step, but then I was also noticing that I had to go back and kind of manually also work on drainage. So a good example would be if you're constipated, I might, yes, use some drainage remedies to get that constipation moving, but I also was noticing that I had to use things like castor oil packs and making sure we were moving the body and hydrating and kind of some of these foundational changes before I was really able to notice differences with flower essences, homeopathy, the medicine that I love. The transformation really feels magical when you're using remedies like that and you're noticing how patients resonate with different remedies. I love the nuances to that work, but if that patient is constantly constipated or in a state of high anxiety, it's a lot harder to focus on those remedies and those really subtle, gentle remedy systems and modalities. Now, again, I will use them in the beginning, but it's not as much of a participatory relationship with the patient when you're selecting a remedy in the beginning, because there are just certain steps that we kind of need to take to get the body into a healing state. I learned early on in my career that many patients are not ready to hold that kind of subtle work, especially if their terrain is congested. And like I mentioned, if they're in acute pain, discomfort, struggling with a mental health issue, we're not always able to pause and take time to kind of hold a remedy and see how it feels, right? So again, this is a process, this health awakening journey. And over time, we might reach for energy remedies way more than we're going to reach for a supplement. But typically we've done some dietary changes, some lifestyle changes at that point already, right? We've worked through the pillars of the vital spirit method. So even the most beautiful energy medicine really, not that it won't work, it will contribute to healing the terrain in some way, but when we're really sluggish and stagnant and our liver's congested and our bowels are not moving, there are some steps that I was finding really needed to be taken first, essentially. And so I do find that I'm using gemmotherapies and drainage remedies at the beginning, yes, for some subtle, gentle detox, but then even more at the end of the vital spirit method when we're really talking about frequency medicine, biofield energy healing, and all of that fun stuff. So sometimes we do have to shake out those rocks before resonance can take root. And that's the essence of drainage before detox. So this is really where gemmotherapy comes to play the most in my practice. So what is gemmotherapy? Gemmotherapy is a plant-based therapy that uses the buds, young shoots, and embryonic tissues of plants. So these parts contain the plant's growth potential, stem cells, minerals, hormones, and enzymes that you don't get in the adult plant. When we're using tinctures in herbal medicine, we're typically using herbs that have been macerated or broken up and then put into, say, an alcohol for the extraction process. And then when you're taking that tincture, the mechanism of action of the tincture is going to be based on the active constituents that herb has imparted onto the tincture that you're taking, right? So this is a little bit different than gemmotherapy. Gemmotherapy is a little bit more dilute, and it's also acting on those emunctories that I mentioned. So it's gently stimulating elimination, regeneration, and repair. It's not as forceful of a medicine, I would say, as herbal tinctures are, although I love herbs. But it's more like whispering to the body, whispering to the organs to eliminate. These extracts are rich in auxins, gibberellins, vitamins, minerals. These are essentially substances that promote cell growth and repair, lymphatic movement, and extracellular matrix remodeling. But gemmotherapy is also vibrational medicine, remember, because these embryonic plant tissues hold the memory of potential, not just the structure of that potential. They communicate with the body's bioenergetic frequencies. So many practitioners and patients report emotional and even spiritual shifts when using the right remedy. And again, sometimes it's harder to pay attention to those subtle shifts when we're dealing with something more acute. In this way, gemmotherapy is not only about physiology, but it's sort of a relationship with the plant. And you might find yourself identifying with a plant's pattern. So for example, strength and perseverance are patterns of quercus or oak. Emotional fluidity is a pattern of ficus or fig. And calm, expansive breath and kind of that free breath feeling is a pattern of tilia or linden. Sometimes the remedy that you need is the one that mirrors your inner state or the one that calls you back into balance. That's why I always say that these aren't just remedies, they're allies. They're really plant allies. And certainly when I'm using herbs in tincture form or sometimes even capsule form, I love building a relationship with that plant. But I find that gemmotherapy lends itself even more to this process. So too would flower essences, which I'll have to have a separate episode about. So, how do you begin going about selecting a gemmotherapy? In my practice, selecting a gemmotherapy remedy starts with identifying the organ system that's most burdened. So, where is the stagnation rooting from? How is that patient expressing their symptoms? So, what is their reactional mode? So, is their body responding with congestion? Is their body responding with excretion? What's the pattern of symptom presentation, both physically and I would absolutely say emotionally and mentally as well? So, for example, a patient with chronic bloating, hormonal acne, and sluggish bowels might benefit from a blend that includes rosmarinus officinalis for liver drainage and estrogen clearance, Juniperus communis for kidney detox and bile support, and Ribes nigrum for adrenal regulation and anti inflammatory impact. Whereas a patient with emotional trauma, dry skin, and maybe poor circulation, maybe they get numb hands and feet, might benefit from Corylus avellana to support pulmonary and hepatic terrain, liver elimination and detox, Vaccinium vitis, one of my favorites for bowel issues. And that's very helpful with connective tissue and also with perimenopausal extracellular matrix support. So maybe that patient also had some joint pain. It's a great example. You can also create synergistic blends that are going to work together. So maybe you're working on liver kidney detox using rosmarinus, juniperus, and betula. Maybe you are working on lymphatic congestion and that person's really prone to respiratory issues. And so you might do Corylus, alnus, and caprinus. Maybe hormonal women's health, hormone balance tincture, blend, and you might do Rubus idaeus, Ribes nigrum, and Vaccinium. So you can see you can blend different remedies based on maybe what organ system you're working on or essentially what pattern of symptoms that you're seeing in that patient. So it's not just about clearing out toxins, but you're teaching the body how to regulate again. You're helping the body get back to that homeostasis. When I'm working with a patient on burnout, especially if they have exhaustion or emotional flatness, I'm definitely going to consider quercus or oak. This is my go-to in profound adrenal fatigue, overwork, loss of resilience. Typically, these patients have really powered through for years and kind of hit a wall, but they'll often expect themselves to keep going and carry on. And oak really helps to restore the strength of an organism, kind of reawaken that power within. I very often use ficus or fig. These patients will describe that they have emotional overload. They might feel irritable or have mental agitation, maybe difficulty sleeping due to rumination. Fig's great for the nervous system, digestion, and emotional integration. And I also mentioned before tilia or linden, a really gentle but powerful nervous system regulator. This is ideal for patients that are stuck in that sympathetic overdrive. Remember that mobilization state, and can be really helpful in soothing anxiety, supporting restful sleep, and regulating vagal tone. I love talking about vagal tone. You can go back and listen to our episodes on that. So, a burnout blend might include ribos nigrum to modulate inflammation and HPA axis resilience, that healthy stress response, quercus to restore inner strength and vitality, and some tilia to calm the nervous system and promote that parasympathetic relaxation and healthy vagal tone. Now, I will probably expand on biotherapeutic drainage in another episode because we're going to run out of time today. But biotherapeutic drainage, in and of itself, is a philosophy and a system used in European biological medicine. So it's combining homeopathy, plant remedies, and trace minerals to support the body in eliminating toxins, not by force again, but by activating its own internal rhythms and releasing through those emunctories or organs of elimination. This approach really does respect the vital force and is such a great tool in terrain healing. So it's kind of like saying to the body, I see that you're trying to release. Let me support that rhythm. Let me give you what you need to do that. I will often use biotherapeutic drainage in chronic illness, chronic complex cases, when that patient's burdened with lots of medications. So maybe they're on a lot of things when they first come to see me. So I need something really gentle. When there's some emotional suppression and I'm looking to gently release that, certainly with hormone imbalances and definitely with long-term gut and liver stagnation. So even though it's subtle medicine, it can be really powerful. And when you combine it with nervous system support, it creates space for that deeper healing that is part of the Vital Spirit method and your health awakening journey. Why does this matter in perimenopause and especially when we have chronic stress, which most women going through perimenopause and menopause have, especially in the area of the country that I practice? But essentially, if you're listening to this and you're in perimenopause, or if you've lived through years of chronic stress or had any traumatic, stressful events in your life, I feel like it's even more important because it allows you to slow down and connect with a remedy and really tap into how your body feels processing that remedy. So, hormonal shifts slow things down, right? Estrogen changes your bile production and liver clearance. Cortisol dysregulation can mess with your lymphatics and your blood sugar. Your nervous system might be in sympathetic dominance from chronic stress. And what's turning off? Well, digestion, detox, elimination, right? And you can't detox when you're in that survival mode. So I find that gemmotherapies and biotherapeutic drainage specifically are so great in these cases because you're just starting to whisper to the body and kind of release the things that it's been holding on to. So it's not as traumatic of a process to heal. So before we chase a pathogen or force a detox, we pause, we breathe, we regulate, we support the emunctories, and we drain. So let's jump into a little case example from my practice. I was recently working with a patient, and let's call her Flora, and she was in her early 50s, and she came to me really depleted. She had a history of high achieving and caregiving, pushing through even when her body was whispering and then shouting at times to slow down. And she described at this point of life waking up exhausted, but feeling wired at night. She had brain fog, some mild depression, and what she called a flatness in her soul. She felt very flat throughout the day. It was kind of hard to get a rise from her emotionally. And she had done some herbal adaptogens. She had been on hormone replacement. She had prioritized protein in her diet and even had added fiber, fat, and ferments. We talked a lot about how clean her diet was. And she did have some great nervous system regulating tools on board, but nothing was really shifting her energy. So instead of doing more, we focused on doing less, but with precision. So we focused on remedies that supported her elimination pathways, and we really focused on restoring core vitality and talking through some of the things that she wanted to feel. Some of her goals were to feel that energy and vitality back in her system. So we started with rosmarinus for gentle liver detox and estrogen metabolism to get things moving. We did use juniperus to assist with kidney elimination and stimulate bile. We used quercus to support that deep constitutional fatigue and rebuild adrenal tone. And we used tilia to soothe some of the sympathetic dominance and allow her body to truly, truly rest. So I'm repeating some of the remedies that I mentioned before so that you can just start to get an idea of how we might use these in different cases so that if any of them resonate with you, you can go do a little research on your own. So within 3 weeks, she reported more stable energy throughout the day. She was getting deeper sleep and felt able to relax at night to get that deep sleep. She was having daily bowel movements. And most importantly, she said she felt emotional lightness. She said, I feel like every part of me is waking up again. She felt like a light had gone on within. So that was really cool to hear. And that's the power of drainage, not just clearing out the waste, but restoring vitality so that your soul can return to your body. And you can, I like to think about this as imagine you have a sponge and the sponge is full of paint and you're starting to wet the sponge and wring out the paint. You could just wring it out once and kind of leave it, right? And that might be the first steps of a detox process, but there's going to be some paint left in there still. So you're going to want to keep rinsing it and squeezing it out and rinsing it and squeezing it out. And I find that gemmotherapies can get even a little bit deeper into that sponge and start releasing things. So maybe that visual helps. And of course, there are other ways to support drainage, which I've hinted at. They're definitely included in all of our seeds of health, right? So things like making sure you're hydrated in the morning, maybe start your day with lemon water or ginger tea. Focus on Epsom salt baths and dry skin brushing and other ways to support your emunctories or your organs of elimination. Move your body every day. Take a walk. Practice some yoga. Maybe do some research on gemmotherapies, maybe look up ribos nigrum or rose marinus, and certainly ask a practitioner for guidance if you need to. And support your nervous system, right? So vagal tone really plays a role in elimination. So make sure that you download my free vagal tone guide and you can get started on some of those things at home. And absolutely stay hydrated, eat fiber-rich foods, and make sure that you're actually eliminating and pooping every day. So all of these are going to help those gemmotherapies or biotherapeutic drainages work better. And sometimes we'll, again, go in that reverse order where we're using the biotherapeutic drainage or the gemmotherapy to kind of get deeper into that sponge and help you eliminate if stagnation has been an issue. So again, these are some of the basics in the Seeds of Health framework, and you can download that free journal as well to use along with a vagal tone guide. So if your body feels stuck, sluggish, maybe oversensitive, remember, you're not broken. Your body is trying to tell you something, and you might just need to clear the channels and make space, make room for flow. Drainage is all about making room, making space for the healing, getting the body into that healing state. It's about honoring your body's intelligence. What does the symptom that your body's experiencing tell you? How does it guide you to the right remedy, right? And it's one of the most compassionate ways to begin too, because as you start to identify, again, we talk all about patterns and archetypes in other episodes, but as you start to identify some of the patterns that your body is telling you, you can ask with some compassionate inquiry around why this pattern is there so that you can take steps to eliminate it. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to download that Seeds of Health journal and my free vagal tone guide to support your daily drainage practices. And if you're looking for more personalized support, you can work with me through the Vital Spirit Method, where I guide women through this process step by step so that you can feel clear, calm, and connected again. So links to these are in the show notes, or you can head to my website, which is Dr. Kelly Livingston, DrKellyLivingston.com. And please download and follow along if you're enjoying this and send it to someone who you think might benefit. Until next time, may your spirit stay vital and your roots grow deep. Have a great day.